Hi, thank you all for joining. We'll wait for 5 more minutes for more participants to join in. All right. Hi. A great design is the foundation of great business. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Swati from QGLUE, your co-host. I welcome you all to the webinar Business Model Design, Combining Strategy with the Design Mindset by Ajay Parasramapuria. Ajay is a practice head and heads the business design at QGLUE. Let me give you a quick introduction of QGLUE. QGLUE is a design and innovation arm of QAI, a 25 plus years transnational organization that is helping accelerate design-led innovation through a variety of interventions. While QAI is a global consulting, advisory, and workforce development organization addressing operational excellence, QGLUE uses design-led practices to help businesses build services that people will adapt and impact the world around us. Using a human-centered approach, QGLUE equips people to solve complex problems by helping them reach a solution that is not just right, but also desirable. Leading thought leaders and practitioners across industries have come together in QGLUE to create an entity leveraging on the legacy and foundation of QAI. All right, I hope you all have a great session. You can also send in your questions during the webinar, and we'll dedicate the last 10 minutes for Q&A. Over to you, Ajay.
Thank you, Swati. And I'll just turn on my webcam, say hi to everybody. And this is what my home looks like in the background. And thanks for guys taking time out to come for today's session. And I will switch off my video after a little while, to save on bandwidth, I guess, because working from home, a lot of us are essentially dealing with bandwidth challenges. Same goes for me. At QGLUE, as Swati mentioned, I look after the business design practice. And when we say we are combining strategy and design thinking, we are fundamentally, moving from advisory-led strategy practice to more curiosity-led strategy practice. So if I reflect on my consulting experience, what I have seen in various organizations, when it came to strategy, we were predominantly dependent on experts and consultants to tell organization with respect to what are the changes that is happening in business landscapes and what are the kind of strategy and opportunities that they should be considering. Versus when you apply and combine it with a design mindset, we move away from expert-led advisory approach to more curiosity and experimentation approach to exploring how do we build new businesses, how do we reinvent our existing businesses, or even scale up parts of our business and make it more relevant in today's context. So today, I'm going to walk you guys through the innovation framework we have at QGLUE. We started 2.5 years back on design thinking. Our experiences, our journey has led to a great understanding of what's really happening in organization and how we could really look at the business innovation context, which obviously is far more relevant today than what it used to be yesterday. Uh, Take you through a little business design process or journey to give you some level of comfort as well as insights in terms of if an organization embarks upon a journey of designing either existing businesses or creation of new ones, what does the journey look like? And today's large focus would be is to take a little dive into the business model innovation component of business design. So obviously there are a few additional components in business design, and what they are, I'll kind of do that. My endeavor would be is to essentially spend a little bit more time trying to understand the different challenges and contexts that you guys are coming from, and try and spend a little time on answering some of the questions that you guys would have. So that's broadly how our 1 hour looks like. A little bit about me in terms of certain experiences of my life that has really shaped me. And my last name, Parasram Puria, actually pretty long, but it's actually a name of a village. It's called Parasrampura. So my ancestors were from this particular village, which is in Rajasthan in north of India. And I come from a family business background. And my grandfather was a shopkeeper. Uh, they used to sell general stores items, and they were popularly known for selling ghee or oil. And my fathers and uncles have all been traders all their lives. So from a very young age, I was exposed to the world of business. I remember at the age of 12, along with my friends, I started a book library, basically exchanging comic books that, as children, a lot of us had. Moving on to setting up exhibition stalls, selling different kind of items that I would source on credit, and learning the ropes of trying to be a businessman. So for a trader's son, the biggest dream was to essentially, set up a factory and become a manufacturer. And post my engineering, I did my master's in industrial technology to learn, what does it take to really set up a factory. And when I came back from US after finishing my graduate study, I had my own set of misadventures. I'm a failed entrepreneur. So I tried my stint at biotechnology, obviously way back in 94, 95. What was the sunrise industry to really work on? It was biotechnology and IT. obviously I chose biotech and not IT. And obviously that venture bombed, and there was great element of learning from there. And that led me to join academics, and I became from a lecturer to an associate professor at SP Jain Institute of Management Research. Many of you would be aware it's amongst the top 10 business school in the country. I was there for 8 long years, and I had the opportunity to evangelize and set up the Center for Project Management in the institute. This happened in the year 2000. And in those days, as a B school, we looked at setting up businesses or diversifications or transformation as a project or a program, and we were building elements of resources, knowledge components, tools to help both the student and professional community as well as organization to migrate there. I realized in academics that whatever we taught, obviously people didn't necessarily apply it in the same spirit or the same rigor. And that led to an element of frustration at a personal professional level. And I wanted to really figure out what the practice involves in getting things done efficiently on new businesses and new ventures. And there is I moved from academics and got into consulting, and I had a great opportunity to work with CEOs of these three organizations, and they were each of these organizations were fundamentally at a transformation journey. And during the transformation journey, the learning and observations were that while we would come up with great business ideas to embark upon, the amount of time that we would take to get approvals, given the annual budget cycles and month of September, October, we would kind of pitch into our management committee. The papers would get ready for the board, and by the time the approvals would come through and we would embark upon executing, a good element of time would have passed. And the assumptions that we made while we were conceptualizing those business ideas, and by the time we got the approvals and we kind of moved into execution, we felt that the assumptions were not valid and the world had changed. So I was very curious to find out, what would it take to really validate our assumptions in a least possible cost, making very small upfront investments, then investing big money. Because once an approval for a strategic project, that's what we used to call it those days, would come through, the world would change. But once the budget has been approved, who the hell is going to go back to management and say, what, guys, we don't need the money, but you know what, we're going to find creative ways to spend that money. And in the heart of heart, a lot of us knew in many of those strategic projects that things might not work, things might have to change, and things of that nature. So that's the time I got introduced to the world of design thinking. And one thing that I really took from that particular practice was, optimizing the cost of experimentation. And from there on, I became a great, a passionate fan of design thinking, and I started applying it wherever I got an opportunity to apply. And in 2012, 2013, in corporate India, obviously there was very early days for design thinking, and we did not get much opportunities at that point in time. And I went back to my love for startups. And in that entire journey, one more thing happened. I got introduced to outdoor world, and my quest to find how do we look at leadership. And I came from a school of thought that leadership cannot be taught in classrooms. So a National Outdoor Leadership School, which is headquartered in the US and they have branches all over the world, also had a branch in North India at the base of the Indian Himalayas. And that's when I really discovered what does it really take to lead people in context which is really, really unknown. And backpacking and going to the mountains became my next big passion. And I use that learnings, and I also got involved with a startup. So I do have a small startup that I am supporting. It's a fintech startup, and I got the opportunity to practice my design thinking skills, as well as build upon my business model and business modeling skills. So that's a little background which has fundamentally shaped me. So in India, I'm proud to say I'm a baniya. So I've always looked at how to make money, or how do people make money, and how do you make things viable. So great ideas needs to scale up, and it needs to become viable. Businesses need to reinvent themselves, make themselves relevant, and these were some of the areas that really drove me to create what we have to share with you today as part of business design. Having said this, this is about me. I know the webinar format is a one-way talk, but I'll try my best to engage with you guys. So I'm going to switch into a little different platform. Okay. I would request all of you guys to grab your cell phone or use your web browser and open up your browsers and type in www.menti.com, and they'll ask you for a code. Today's code is there in front of you. It is 173417. It's an online polling platform which would help to get to know you guys. All right, so request you guys to quickly do this. All right, so let's start with a little fun poll. How are you guys feeling? I know a lot of us are logging in from home, and how are you feeling? All right, so I do have some angry people on the webinar today. All right. All right, some of you are feeling like $1,000,000. Hello to those guys. All right, it's a great way to also know how many of us are there in this webinar, and yes, how many of us are active also. Okay, I have 58 responses, and my GoToMeeting panel tells me we are 110 plus. All right, some of you are really frustrated and angry, and I hope that's got to do with the lockdown situation and the overall, environmental challenges that we are dealing with. Some of you are perhaps tired looking at your laptops, or there's too many webinars to attend to. All right, great. So thanks. This was just to quickly help you familiarize with this new platform that we are using. All right, great. I'm going to move on to our next small poll. Just want to know, where are you guys logging in from? You could just type out the name of the city that you are logging in from. Wow, I have friends from Tokyo, Portugal. A large contingent from Mumbai. Oh, Lima. I haven't been there. Welcome, welcome, all of you guys, welcome. I'm sure many of you are in different time zones, so thanks for joining in. Happy to have you guys here. Fabulous. Okay. Few more responses. All right. So thanks a lot and welcome once again, friends. Next thing, just getting a little sense of the kind of organizations you represent. I guess people in healthcare are really busy keeping us safe. So there's a little less participation from them. Not a problem. All right. Okay. So the others category seems to be significant in number, but barring that, people from education, consulting, I'm sure you're all moving on to virtual deliveries of a lot of your work. Folks in IT, ITS, I thought you guys were already, working in a virtual kind of an environment. We have few folks from manufacturing and some from retail and BFSI. Great, fabulous. So that's what our composition of people looks like from industry perspective. Very quick, what's stressing us right now? And I would really like to get some insights from business or organization perspective and not personal, because personally I'm stressed out about replenishing my essential stock because my neighborhood definitely is running out of it. Yeah, startups obviously are having their cash run out issues. All right, building business models that's relevant post COVID, I guess that's hopefully we will get some insights from today's session. Yep, the focus is becoming very inward, isn't it? So that's something which is there. All right. Yep, the landscapes are completely changing. Lack of job opportunities. Yes, that's really true and relevant. I always say, and people don't like it when I say, if you are a mid-level professional, 45 plus, and you have a job, it's consider yourself lucky because the world is changing so goddamn fast. All right. Uncertainty, business plan execution, COVID impact on IT businesses, reducing revenues, posing opportunities which need to be missed. All right. Retaining talent. Yeah, I was also connecting with people in my, small enterprises and trading community. I guess people are really concerned of how they are going to recover their loss once the lockdown is over. All right. Okay. I love this one. How to be future ready for businesses. Yep. And today's webinar, we would essentially try and help you get some insights how we could actually do this. All right. Yes. All right. Fabulous. So working on new business models. Yes. Business plan execution. Yes. Excellent. Being relevant after COVID. Yes. If we look at all the challenges or the stress points that we have, and we are all trying to, overcome the current reality of managing our business operations in today's context, dealing with logistical and other challenges around it. I think the mute point that we at QGLUE also want to really help organizations and industries, deal with is that a disruption and a chaos would also give opportunities to new things moving forward. Organization needs to get prepared today more than ever to figure out what are some of those opportunities that they would really like to focus on, and how do we go about testing and experimenting with those opportunities before a large sum of money starts getting invested in building those businesses out. And that's essentially the key theme and the key piece of today's webinar. So having said that, I also like to quickly get a little sense of prioritization from you guys with respect to how would you rate these 5 points, because these are 5 fundamental challenges that we are observing and we are experiencing in industry today. So we have challenging landscape. Okay, things are changing around us, and it's obviously leading to a lot of uncertainty. Mobilization of resources, whether it's funds or people or even logistics, supply chain, that's really impacted. In many organizations, there seems to be unclarity of certain directions. How do we go? Where do we go? A lot of focus has moved onto execution efficiencies, and working from home, we are forced into it. So, all right. So could you guys respond to this poll, please? So just give us a sense of what's the big thing that we are all trying to grapple with. Some more responses I'm waiting for on the poll. All right. So let's look at the results that we have. I mean, changing landscapes. I guess a few of us are, not necessarily concerned in terms of its impact. Looks like they are uh, their ability to adapt to the changing landscape is very much in place. But a significant group of people are at a business level are really concerned how the landscape is going to really change. And trust me, I have a similar level of concerns and risks, because I belong to an old school approach to education and facilitation. We did a lot of in-person work, right? Even we are forced to, and we are all moving and adapting ourselves. I guess as a race, we will all adapt to our new reality. Obviously, leaders and mavericks and innovators and business champions would perhaps adapt to it much faster than everybody else, right? Having said that, the next big challenge looks like in terms of mobilization of resources. Uh, a lot of us are also wondering how we're going to mobilize resources. All right, so how do you bring all the pieces together? And one big change that I foresee that's really going to happen, and on the positive side, is we're going to see a lot of collaboration happening across businesses. No more one business being able to do things by itself and have a sense of control. That's a change that we foresee in terms of leveraging resources from different partners. And obviously, how do you make collaboration and partnership models in a business context successful? We still have to learn a lot in that area. Again, a little divided view and opinion around the unclear direction. Some of us are in the low area, so congratulations. You seem to be having a team or an organization where there is a significant element of clarity in terms of how you want to proceed further. But a good majority are uh, uh, you know recognize the importance of setting clear directions, as well as they understand those directions are going to have a high impact onto their particular business. Execution efficiency looks like it's on in a ranking mode, not necessarily a huge area of concern. I mean, if I go by what results I see on the poll. Having said this, I think we as a nation, we grew up with a paradigm of getting things done and getting things done faster. And the Jugaad and the entire quality movement that started in '85, right? It was all about getting things done and getting it right the first time. All right, so that's where execution efficiencies, and that as a nation we really are great, and we have leveraged that particular part of it. Aligning team productivity of group working and team. I mean, a very divided opinion there in terms of the responses of 66 people that I have over here. I'll further share with you how we are trying to resolve or address some of those risks, as part of our business design practice. So thanks a lot for responding to this poll. It just gives me an element of insight with respect to where you guys come from, what kind of organization, and what is the current risk that you really want some insights into. This is my cue to move back into my presentation. I hope to give you some insights in terms of how we could help solve some of these challenges, or what kind of challenges does business design really address. Before we jump into the business design, just to give you a little 10,000 feet view at QGLUE. Obviously, when we started off our design thinking and design and innovation practice, we focused on the design thinking, design doing part of it. And one of the key learnings that we have had is, design thinking cannot be a one size fit all, right? It cannot be applied across the board. My personal experience, it really works well when we are really trying to do product or service or experience innovation, and trying to discover unmet needs of customers and quickly ideating on it, prototyping it, and testing out whether the problem that your customers have, we have a solution for it. And if you're creating a product or a service or an experience that actually customers are willing to pay for it. After having done that, the whole challenge of scaling up and making it a viable business steps in. At the same time, we just can't embark upon an innovation journey without knowing where do we really need to apply this innovation mindset or the design mindset. So at QGLUE, we strongly feel that organizations need to make strategic choices by A, defining their approach to innovation, and B, identifying opportunities in their landscape, and basis the opportunity, choose the approach that would make more sense. So for example, if you are dealing with uh, addressing some unmet needs of your current customer segments or trying to discover new customers that you could service, and you need a new product offering for that segment, then obviously you need to follow innovation process to address it, create that solution, create that particular product, validate it, and then the time comes to really scale it up and make it into a more viable business. At the same time, for existing businesses, we also feel that there are many opportunities that require them to just tweak their existing business models or reinvent their business models and experiment with them. All right. And then kind of quickly execute at a larger scale. And obviously, what we also see in the industry is organizations setting up their own uh, accelerators in collaboration, in partnership with few other players and people in the ecosystem, as well as a lot of work is started to happen around open innovation, where a group of people from different organization, different industry kind of come together and co-create and innovate together. So, very, very exciting stuff is happening in the innovation landscape. So at QGLUE, we essentially uh, have started this business design practice. We already have in place the design thinking, design doing practice. And what I am essentially going to, walk you guys through is a business design journey. Obviously, it starts off by doing a little group conversation and defining how you would like to start your innovation journey. What are the specific areas of innovation you want to focus on? And then moving on to identifying opportunities in your context. Opportunities to improve existing businesses, opportunities to move into adjacent market. When I say adjacent market, what we mean is that you have certain organizational capabilities already in place. There are certain customer segments that you are servicing, and you could add a new segment or a new market to it and move on to adjacent markets, or you could just reinvent your offering for the existing market itself, whatever you might do, right? So you have adjacent market opportunities to leverage on, and obviously you also have some new business opportunities that will come up. So depending on the type of opportunity, the approach to innovating that, building it, scaling it up is going to be crucial. And especially true for existing businesses. For startups, it's a very different world altogether. The moment you've identified your opportunities, we move into business model design. I mean, the webinar today, I'll give you a deep dive into what this entails. Then you would essentially move on to validating those business models by carrying out certain experiments. We are strong believers that experiments should be completed within a short period of time. So the shortest time I tend to constrain my teams is 4 to 6 weeks. But we do appreciate and realize that there are times when certain experiments would take a little longer period of time. But as a businessman, you need to try and complete your experiments really, really fast and get the insights, the learnings from it, and then move on to essentially building the organization which will essentially deliver onto the business model that you have just kind of tested it out. And once we have the organization model design in place, I guess we're ready to kind of go into the traditional strategy execution practice. And that's where we map out our goals, our matrices, create our execution game plans like a project plan, define responsibilities, and start making sure that we are working on that. Organization design and organization model also becomes very, very crucial here, because you got to have a right cultural fit for any strategy to succeed. And every business model may require a different strategy. So these four things, that is business model, experimentation, organization model, and strategy execution, are the four critical components of business design. So when we actually started creating this components, our whole endeavor was, you know what, there are conversations in business teams or teams within organization that they need to have, and not rely on expert advisory on each of those elements, and move on to a curiosity led approach, and using the design mindset, have those kind of conversations. So we ended up creating facilitation tools, canvases, card decks, so on and so forth, to help teams have this conversation around these components and build their model up in a very quick, efficient way. So I've listed the kind of time it takes for each of those conversations to get completed. Obviously, like all of you, I'm also pivoting to move on to virtual. We started our initial experiments on Mural. Obviously, Zoom has become a platform of choice for conversations now, and I'm sure a lot of you are working with new sets of tools and so on and so forth. So that's what the journey essentially looks like, right? So we strongly feel within a period of 4 to 6 months, if we are not able to demonstrate a valid, tested business model and an organization model to support it, all right, it's not worth pursuing it, right? So in a 4 to 6 month of time frame, how do we move from an opportunity to a scale up mode, or basically kill that business model if it's not working out? So this is how a typical journey of business design works out in an organization. uh, when is it more effective? It's obviously effective post product market fit. It works very well for an existing business when you want to reinvent your new business, discover some adjacent markets, reinvent some of your business elements or business model elements, sorry. If you already have some innovation that you are working on and you want to kind of scale it up, that's a right time for business design to be put into action. And definitely post product market fit, we need to be prepared with the business design to scale up that particular business and make it more viable. People from the startup community, I'm sure you are familiar with this kind of a graph. A lot of us are, somewhere in between, and a lot of ventures they die, or they kind of fail to kind of scale up post even product market fit. So that's where business design could really make a huge contribution. All right. And moving forward, I like to get into the business model innovation, the business design, one of the components of business design. And then what I like to really say about this is that when the going gets tough, do we continue pushing what we are doing, or do we change where we are going, right? So I'm a firm believer that we also need to have a little open mind to looking at opportunities which may not necessarily be a part of your current core, and you might want to kind of experiment. Business design is all about taking small bets and experimenting with certain business concepts. And what are the elements you want to test on? Which are the ones that you should be focusing on? Business model innovation component essentially helps answer that particular part of it. Before I jump into that, I really want to credit some of the people I'm really inspired by. Strategizer as an organization has, they were the first ones to publish the business model generation book way back in 2010. It gave us a beautiful one-page visual view of a business model, and obviously educated us in terms of the elements and so many other dimensions, and made it very, very simple to work with. I'm a great fan of business model generation, and subsequently their book on value proposition design uh, has been great with helping teams across the world understand how do we design the new value proposition for our customers. The recent book that they have published is on testing business ideas, and the book that got launched just today in the US, it will still take some time for it to reach the Indian shores, is on Invincible Company, and I don't know when they are going to publish the next book, which is the team alignment map. So you would you would find great level of insights from these books. Some of the other books that have really inspired me is the Design Thinking Playbook, and the one that I'm currently very, very excited about is Live from Crypto Valley. I mean, this is a design thinker's book for designing collaborative, community-based businesses. Obviously, this book shares the experiences of what's happening in the crypto world in Europe, and how you're doing an ecosystem design. How do you really create a new ecosystem and collaboratively work with multiple different players? So it's a great book. I would highly recommend that you guys kind of look at it. And obviously IDEO, Board of Innovation, BMI Lab, these are essentially been my source of learning, and I've been inspired by them. So I try and acknowledge all the copyrights of individual respective owners. My endeavor at a personal level has been to contextualize and summarize these knowledge nuggets and build a learning experience which is very, very contextual. And in order to build that experience, we've designed tools, canvases, card decks, some kits, and we have tried our level best to illustrate it with Indian examples wherever possible. So just in case if there is some image I have used, and if that author is there on this chat and I have not given the credit for lack of information or just my plain oversight, please just drop in us a mail and I'll essentially fix that. I also like to acknowledge that there are quite a lot of graphic designers who have helping us to bring all these things to you. All right, so what is the business model? A quick refresher. This is from the business model canvas, which was developed by Strategizer. So there are these 9 elements into any business. The 2 elements that are the starting point of any business model is knowing your customer and designing your value proposition. Next, you essentially have other elements that help us ensure that the value reaches the customer through the right set of channels, and you have a strategy to engage and build your relationship with your customers. And on the back-end side, we have various key processes and activities that need to be done to deliver that value proposition. And you definitely need a people, an organization, and a structure to do that with a network of partners. And last but not the least, rather the most important one, you got to be really making a profit over here. So if you look at any business model, it essentially, there are 2 sides to it. One is the customer facing side, which I like to call it the business side, and one is the organization side, which is the back end where all the things happen. All these businesses, they operate in a context, and that context has its own level of impact to all this business. On the organization side, the impact of industry forces impacts us. On our profit, cost, and revenue side, there are macroeconomical forces which is going to act. And on the right side, on the business side, there are other market forces that impacts our business model. And also you have key trends that is happening, the shift that is taking place amongst people, the shifts that are taking place within our own environment, the climate change issues. There are so many trends that we are seeing that's going to really impact the way the value is going to be created, captured, and essentially delivered. So once you have a business model and you map it onto this particular canvas, all right, you also need to look at the space outside the business model and map your context with respect to trends, market forces, macroeconomical factor, industry forces relevant to your business model. And what we really found in practice, rather through research, is the boxes that you see in color: engagement, channels, revenue, people, activities, and partners. We find that there is a pattern in which innovation is happening in each of these areas. All right, and these patterns are what we call it innovation tactics. So what we were able to find that there are roughly around 75 innovation tactics which are grouped under engagement innovation tactics, channels, revenue models, process structure, and network innovation. And what we essentially did, by the way, guys, we were preparing for a physical world. I'm in the process of moving a lot of my content onto the virtual world. So we are almost there. So each of these innovation tactics, we created a kind of a card deck, and we were experimenting with it in some of our workshops. And we had about 75 of them. So I'm just giving you a little sample. So you'll find there are patterns of innovation, okay? And each of those patterns, we have a strategic choice to make in your business, in the context in which you operate. You could choose the tactics that makes more relevant sense in your context. So we have a library of these tactics, and you could kind of choose them. This is just a small sample of tactics which you see on your screen. And once you made the choices of your tactics, all right, what we feel is if you are innovating or reinventing more than 2 or 3 elements in your business. So for example, if you're only making a process change, I would not call it a business model innovation. You're making an innovation or an improvement in just the process. But if you are making reinventing or innovating on process plus your channels plus the way you're going to look at your new revenue modeling, okay, the way you are going to deliver the experience. So if you are doing more than 2 or 3, or I would really like to say 3 is the magic number for me. So if any business we are inventing or rather reinventing and innovating on 3 elements or more, it becomes actually a business model innovation. If you're only doing it in one area, it's innovation or it's an improvement, but not a business model innovation. So anything over 2 or 3. Having said this, how do you experiment with BMI in your context? Obviously, you create your business model, you choose your innovation tactics. Next big thing is to identify the assumptions that we are making and prioritize the assumptions that you really want to test. Having identified the assumptions, those are hypotheses for us to test, then we need to choose testing and experiment methods. Certain criteria to keep in mind when looking at experiment methods. A, it needs to be done in a short period of time. Obviously, certain experiments can be done in a week's time. Certain experiments may take a little longer. We got to have little boundaries around cost of experiments that we are likely to fund or likely to invest in. And those boundaries need to be little, I would say, stringent, so that we are pushed to innovate on experimentation a whole lot more. And my experience has been that for any single hypothesis, we should use at least 2 methods to test it. It gives us better quality of insights. And obviously, once we have done our testing, iterating on it, pivoting on it at least 2 to 3 times is what we have seen is required for success. So to sum up, if you are innovating or reinventing on two or more elements, three is my magic number, you are working on business model innovation. If you are only working on one, okay, that's innovation which is specific just to a particular element. It could even be just an improvement. And identifying of assumptions, your hypothesis to essentially test out those things before major big investments are made in setting up or taking those innovations into the market. Let me share one particular example. This happens to be a work we did along with the insurance organization. Uh, most of the customers in this insurance company, they were in the demographic bracket of 35 to 45, and all of them were investing in their future, whether it was for health or for financial requirements and things of that nature. So a significant number of folks were in the middle age kind of a bracket. And within that segment, we had good number of people who were living separately from their old parents. And given the distance, their inability to really give care to their parents, this organization wanted to create a different business offering or a business model to address this particular issue. Some of the assumptions we made or we had at the time after initial ideation on our product offering. Obviously, all the product offering did have a digital experience or a digital service to go along with, because that's what would have helped to scale it up and bring in efficiencies in delivering. There were many assumptions, but we picked up these three as uh, crucial assumptions to really work on. A, there was an assumption that once we create some digital apps, senior citizens in current context will be able to use it. Another assumption was that the need and requirement of senior citizens or parents and the children who are trying to support them or give them care who are remote is all around medical and health related challenges of theirs. And they would pay for someone who would aggregate services from different players. So these were three hypotheses that needed to be tested out. So we picked up few testing methods and we looked at problem solution interviews. We took a wide spectrum of the customer segment. We moved beyond demographic profiles of the segment, and we essentially looked at psychographic profiles and also conducted some expert interviews. This was done on the field. We did some observation studies. We had to discover. So at the same time, we needed to validate few things. So testing was of two types. One, to discover whether there's enough desirability in the segment for service aggregation of that kind. We needed to validate that people would pay for those services and how much were they willing to pay. And we also wanted to validate whether the experience that you're creating for the current context would be relevant for the user. So the desirability angle. So there are two types of outcome that we desire from an experiment, either to check for desirability and feasibility, or to check for desirability and viability, or any combination of the three. At the same time, our testing method involves either discovering things or going and validating a value proposition. So we did this test, and there were some insights that we got from the learnings that we got. A, in the desirability, we found that parents, especially in the current context, senior citizens, they typically hide their problems to avoid inconveniences to their children. They don't really share. We came across a case where a mother, she was suffering from breast cancer, but she did not share her pain and the trouble that she was going through. Obviously, it was later accidentally discovered. It was a stage 2, so there was still a possibility of saving her. But obviously, she didn't want to inconvenient or have any inconvenience to the children to focus away from their careers, from their work, and from their high-paced lives, and kind of focus on that. She was essentially hiding it, and we saw that as a common pattern across. Uh, and a lot of the digital apps fundamentally rely on the quality of data that will be available there. So if people are doing this, then we were scratching our heads. How do we handle that? People were not wanting to go to assisted homes, and the insight that we got is people want assisted living in their own homes, and at the same time, despite their them being physically challenged, they preferred or they didn't want to move out from their home without a companion. So either they will take somebody along with them, or they really desire, or they wanted to essentially do that part. Uh, Physical active seniors who were in great health, they were willing to compromise on convenience and comfort just to save money, despite how rich or how poor they would be. But what we found that even if they could afford things or their children could afford to do it for them, they came from a generational mindset that they would compromise on convenience, comfort, just to save money, because they've come from a generation which never really believed in spending money. When it came to taking decisions, we found that a lot of these senior folks, they have at least one friend, and he or she could be a trusted advisor. So no matter what new service, what new product, or anything that they want to buy, they would definitely consult somebody in their network who's a very trusted advisor. So for all important matters, they need to kind of do that. And yes, we found a lot of children, and I would include myself also in this sample, that we all feel guilty that we are unable to really help our parents. So while we might contribute money and make sure that they have things that could give them comfort, their needs are essentially much more than that. So this organization, they had a business model, they had created a prototype, and before one could really decide how do we take it to the market, we conducted this test, we learned from these insights, the business models were tweaked, the features that were part of the service package was pivoted around. And being an insurance company, there were some regulatory challenges also in terms of what an insurance company can do, cannot do. So with all those learnings, the business model was essentially pivoted. And this took us about like what 6 months of time. And the reason that happened obviously is the availability of people from the organization to defocus from the regular BAU or business as usual work, and focus more on new things that needs to be done. So that's one specific example. Just to quickly sum up business model innovation, there are 4 activities that we need to do. Define your customer value proposition, create your business model canvas, explore the innovation tactics, and keep iterating on your business model. Identify your assumptions, build your experiment plans, and obviously you want to kind of go back and execute it. And once you've done it, there are the other 3 components that could be done either in parallel or in sequence, that varies from context to context. But organization design, strategy execution, and a whole big piece of experimentation. Different methods, how to carry it out, and stuff of that nature. So that's what business model innovation involves. My experience, it tends to work in some organization, it tends to really go wrong in some places. What could go wrong if you all decide, or some of you decide to move on this journey, is in the initial stage, there's going to be a bloat of a lot of new initiatives that needs to be kicked off. So there are already initiatives going on, Plus, today's pandemic challenge also has thrown up a lot of changes that is happening. And in the same context, if we are going to look at business model innovation, it's going to bring in few more experiments, few more initiatives to really try out. And that could really overwhelm a lot of organizations. We have also seen organizations who have embarked upon it and build great ideas, but they have failed to scale up that idea. So the idea may have got initiated by, say, a marketing team. They were able to rope in other cross-functional collaborators. But when it came to scaling it up and operationalizing it, once again, organization priorities, all other issues have fundamentally prevented it from being scaled up. So that's where we see BMI going wrong. We've also experienced, pet ideas and other fixations of leaders of organizations that essentially come in our way of success. One of the fixation that I am currently experiencing, at least with one organization that I am currently helping them on BMI, is the fixation on return of investments, and they have a fixed number in mind. All right, whatever it might be, and they say that, okay, any great business idea or a venture should at least give me this X percentage of return over this period of time. And you know what? In the context of innovation, uh, we cannot justify ROI in early stages. Uh, we need some time to experiment with it and then get insights, and then one can really do justification. So investing in BMI and parking funds for innovation, that remains a huge challenge in many organizations. Uh, Business model innovation would require us to be lovers of experimentation and taking small bets. Obviously, the bet sizes has to be defined and contained. And trust me, a lot can be done even in limited set of budgets. And lastly, there's too much of inward focus. A lot of the workouts that we end up looking at, this lot internal focus of improving existing processes, existing channels, rather than really looking out for new opportunities, or look wearing an outside in kind of a hat. So these are something that we need to be really careful about if you guys are going to embark on it. A mindset that is really required is you need to be an explorer. Despite the going getting tough, uh, we want people with a level of optimism and an ability to go out and explore, connecting with people not just within the organization but across the organization, within the industry, and doing things together. We need organization which can quickly deploy new platforms and build new skills faster, and obviously the love for experiments. That also is synonym to saying that we got to have risk-taking capability, and yes, we can decide our risk appetites with business design. One example that is really inspiring, I really like to share before we open up the chat for question and answer. Uh, this is a photograph of a mall in Russia. I don't know how many of you would be able to guess. This mall is designed, managed by IKEA, the Swedish furniture company. IKEA always wanted to enter Russia since the early 90s, but the communist fall that happened in the early 90s, they could not gain to enter Russia at that time. So in the late 90s, early 2000, IKEA entered into Russia market. Obviously, they started by setting up their IKEA warehouse / stores, and they were being troubled a lot by the local authorities there for certain building permits, certain safety issues, fire issues, and so on and so forth. So I guess they just were kind of troubling them. But that really taught them a lot, and they saw a very different set of an opportunity in Russia. given the real estate pricing over there and everything else that was happening in the economy in the early 2000s. So they pivoted, and what they did is they actually started establishing malls. And in the mall, while they would have their store, a large portion of the mall was open for other brands, local organizations to come and set up their own shops and stores there. So from a furniture manufacturing, IKEA moved into becoming a mall company and managing malls, designing malls, and I'm guessing they would have used a lot of their furniture in building this particular mall. So very inspiring that the organization pivots around opportunity, looks at the context, they explore new markets, they have a tremendous capacity, and I really admire in the way they kind of collaborate with the community at large, building platforms and developing skills not only within their organization but across the boards and experimenting with new things. So a very inspiring organization and something to kind of look up to. So with that little note, I'm going to pause here and check with you, how are you guys doing. So very quickly, I'm going to go back to my polling platform and take in some questions that you may have. Okay, so one very quick poll just to give us an understanding in terms of how do you see your current organization strength? Could some of you guys please respond to the poll? You need to go back to menti.com. Hello? Okay, so maybe we don't have time. I got my queue. I've overshot my 1 hour time. Can I get some responses from you guys in terms of what are some questions that you may have? I'll just skip to that question answer part. So guys, can you on menti.com using the same code type in any questions you have? I'll be happy to answer them. What is a bottleneck? Okay, I'm just waiting for a few more questions to pop up here. I don't know who asked me this question, but anything that comes in the way of success is a bottleneck, and that bottleneck could be in any element of your business model. All right. What are the types of tests we can do during experimentation? So there are two types of tests. Either they are discovery test or validation test. And we do this test to either check for desirability and or feasibility and or viability. So certain experiment methods allow you to do all three. Certain experiment methods allow you to only check for one of those aspects. So these are the types of tests and what these tests try to answer us for. Thank you. How to approach business design as a career choice. So obviously it starts with education and creating opportunities to really practice what you learn. and working with an existing organization, drawing out the existing business models, and gaining the confidence and experience, I would say is the right way to approach it. Obviously, there are a lot of resources today available to get a start on the knowledge side of it, but the best way to learn is applying it. So create an opportunity where you can apply in your existing business or even a hypothetical business for that matter. How do you get the top management on board to start the BMI process? I guess one way to do it is to initiate the crucial conversation of opportunities that is there in the landscape of that particular business. So currently, I'm doing this for a few organizations where with the senior management and the CEO, before we talk about business design, we say, okay, let's sit together and identify opportunities that we see in our landscape. And once we start collecting their ideas and thoughts, we kind of move them into some prioritization grids and able to kind of choose it. And that is a good approach to help them realize which of those opportunity is actually a BMI, or which of it is a product innovation, or which of it is something else. So opportunity navigation, that's something that you need to look into. How far what you spoke is relevant to educational institute? I guess educational institute, depending upon the level of students that you are working with, yeah, there are two sides to it. The education institution from the view of teaching people. So how do you quickly help student communities understand and appreciate business models and what can be done? So that's one side of it. And educational institutions also are running their own sort of businesses. So you would definitely have a need to innovate or reinvent different elements in your own business model. So for example, the current change that we see in today's context of all educational institutions have been shut down, they're moved virtually, so their engagement strategy with their students, the value proposition that they had, and their engagement strategy is undergoing a major shift. Obviously, new level of partnerships they will develop or are already in place with technology companies or product companies, and new sets of skills that is required in their own people, as well as changes in their processes. There are a lot of those changes already happening. So if you honestly ask me, educational institutions are undergoing a business model innovation right now as we speak. If we can identify all the elements on one single canvas, look at it, and choose the hypothesis and prioritize them, I think we will be able to manage the process far more efficiently. Thank you. How does BMI propose a process change by company size? Let's say a startup. I guess there is a similar question on my go-to meeting chat also. When you're looking at a startup, you would essentially be having a particular offering, and once you have validated that offering with a customer and you have a paying customer for it, I'm not talking about whether the startup is making profit on their offering, but they have a product which they have tested and validated with the customer, and they have a paying customer for it. That's when we say your product market fit has been established, has been validated. Post that, you want to scale up and build your business. So business design and BMI is definitely needed at that stage. However, at the time of creating your prototype and going out there and testing it with live customers, we also feel that business model canvas, business model innovation could give the startups great level of insight with identifying value opportunities, identifying channel opportunities, identifying any other element opportunities to create a differentiator for their ventures. When it comes to established or other existing organization, large enterprises, I don't think we have a choice but not to build a portfolio of new business model experiments, because we need to be ready for the future and you need to keep testing out what sort of a business model would really work, and we should have a large portfolio of business models that are being tested. Now those business models, are they for existing businesses? Yes. Would the portfolio also have some new business ideas in it? Yes. So you will have a diverse portfolio in larger enterprises. And in small and medium enterprises, it would be helpful to look at their existing business, reinvent it, make it relevant for the changing context, identify opportunities which is adjacent to them, not something which is completely out of the box, something which is really adjacent, right? So we could identify some of those opportunities and prepare. My only concern with small medium enterprise has been, or rather my experience has been, that predominantly you have one person or two people in the organization who takes all the decision, and there is a gap in, between them and their next level to provide bandwidth to try out new things. So that is something that I have experienced and observed, and a lot of decisions, a lot of work is dependent on that business owner or their entrepreneur in SME segments. So their capacity to really try out new experiment, that starts to get impacted. So if there are ways in which that can be addressed, I think SMEs can really leverage out of your BMI model. All right. All right. So how can you become an internal BMI consultant in an organization? Fabulous. I guess folks from the strategy function, or even for that matter from business excellence, the best way to is to build on your facilitative skills, as well as start practicing these things out in current context and gain the confidence. And yes, we do have tools which we have developed, which we are using as facilitators. Fingers crossed that we would be able to scale up those tools to develop other facilitators too very soon. So thanks a lot for that question. Swati, do we have more time to answer more questions? I'm happy to do that because it's already past our end time. So
we can wrap it up, Ajay. We can, yeah.
Okay. Guys, I will definitely go through these questions which are there, and along with my team, I would try and write out or type out some responses for questions once we are able to group all these questions together, and we can kind of send it to you by email. Thanks a lot for your patience and being on this webinar, which got extended by at least about 20 odd minutes, right? So thanks a lot for your patience. I wish you all the best, and thank you very much.